the automobile what's there, what's not in the States?
So I did this on the break. It was just the quick access to what we have access to. Yoshi, one of the other things that, and I'm glad you're part of the nuclear medicine, working with the Nuclear Medicine Society. PRT is more than just, and working with nuclear medicine is a little bit different than just a regular drug. It's working with a lot of different, in the US, for instance, nuclear medicine is not under the NCI, but under the Department of Energy. And so there's licensing for removal of nuclear waste, there's licensing for having even energy that has nothing to do with medicine. And we would be the one that says members not US. And so we, even once we got Gallium-68 NetSpot approved, we had this whole issue with just to have a generator on site triggered people, centers not to be able or to require to have a $2 million bond in order just to have the generator, and that was stopping them from doing what is a $3,000 scan. So I just made this up pretty quickly. So in the U.S. we have, it's also here. We have expanded access to PRT and some clinical trials, so the availability is limited. There's about 12 centers that will do it right now. It's mostly funded. Obviously, people can go other places to get it. Cost to patient, all the places that have it in the U.S. right now are doing it under expanded access, but there is some cost to the patient in certain areas of $2,000 or $3,000. When obviously you go and get it overseas, it is $10,000 to $15,000 around. The cost will go up considerably once it becomes an approved drug. I'm going to guess it's going to be in the $40,000 to $50,000 a round when it gets approved in the U.S. So unless you have coverage that's going to take it, it's going to get very, very expensive in the U.S. very, very soon. In June 1st of 2016, NetSpot, which is dotatate, Gallium-68 dotatate, was approved in the U.S. As of 2-3 days ago, there are 49 centers doing NetSpot right now. That number is probably going to go up to about 60 in the next few months. It's mostly covered by insurance. Some of these things don't work well, but not all. So in the U.S., we have things like Medicare, which is what most people who are either disabled or over 65 get. Medicare has it approved on their schedule to pay. Everyone else who has private insurance, we have things called RBM, which is benefits manager, radiology benefits manager, and it has to be approved by the benefits manager of that insurance company. We have two major ones in the United States. One decided it was okay, one decided that it wasn't okay. So about 40 to 50% of those who have private insurance are being denied a NetSpot scan because the RBM feels it's still experimental. And we're working on that with NANETS, with various different societies to try to get that corrected. Those who have to self-pay, it's about $3,000 right now. The real price is about $8,000 or $9,000 for a Gallium-68 scan. We do have some experimental scans going on or clinical trials in dotatate scans. Those will continue. Octreotide is available to anyone pretty much after ProMid. It's covered by every insurance. This is where we get in trouble in the U.S. There's a wholesale cost of what the drug goes to either a pharmacy or a center, and then it's what that wholesale cost gets billed out at. So the wholesale cost for LAR is about $4,000. That bill can come to about $20,000 to $22,000 a shot. Now, it may be that the patient only pays a couple $100s, but they'll see $22,000 to $23,000. Same thing with lanreotide. The wholesale insurance is slightly greater, and the multiple of it brings it up to about $25,000 a shot at some centers, but your copay could be next to nothing. For instance, when I was on lanreotide, Medicare paid UCSF $5,200, even though UCSF billed $25,580. So the rest was written off somewhere. CERTs, it's available, but it's used off-label. So It's funded if you can get it approved for it. It ain't cheap. I think because it requires a surgical suite, that can run like $100,000 because you have a pre-mapping, you're going back in. This is expensive to go back into a suite twice. Everolimus is covered. It is about, the wholesale cost again is about $14.5. What actually gets billed can be something completely different. Sunitinib, same thing. What we didn't talk about here is obviously if you're talking about CERT, chemo and bland embolization, we have ongoing fights about which is better of the three CERTs, chemo or bland embo. Those are available and mostly cover CAPTEM, which is actually, remind me, who was? Yeah, Strasbourg Fine. It wasn't George, but George. I mean, these are commonly available drugs, but they're not. They weren't done in a randomized controlled trial. They were done kind of retrospectively. We now have a randomized controlled trial going on drugs to see how effective it is and whether you actually need both drugs. And what we haven't talked here about at all is poorly differentiated tumors at all. So there are platinum-based, and those are readily available in the U.S. And I'll wrap that part up. That's it.
So leave that up there for a second. So part of, I mean, the rich country of America with all of these things available, if you don't have the right insurance or don't have the right diagnostics to get into a clinical trial, the answers here are no on PRRT, no on NetSpot for all those people with private insurance that it doesn't approve.
And only in 40, I mean, we're a big country as well, so 49, we have 50 states, and these don't cover most of it.
And if you can't afford or your insurance doesn't cover it, and on and on. So it's that dichotomy that most of your countries that have at least government plans that cover everybody, and of course we're trying to unravel what we did to make progress on that, have better access than a nation that has all these things in place, but the separation between people who don't. And a lot of people go to Europe still for beer.
And then actually the real cost. I mean, we're, and I didn't put on, we haven't talked about Telotrestat here, but if you were on Telotrestat, if it's coming to your country, and you're on octreotide, LAR, at the end of the day, your wholesale costs for drugs are $10,000 a month. So that's besides the rest of your cost of care as a NET patient is at least $150 a year. At the wholesale, you know, how are the NET patients going to continue this if there's rationing of care based on what the economic value of that care is? These drugs are starting to get really, really expensive. And at what point are we're going to get cut off not because of they're not, you know, the efficacy is there, but, you know, are we really going to pay $250,000 a year to keep each of us going? Do your countries have enough money to do that? That's one of my fears, you know, kind of the everolimus got cut off in the UK, not because it wasn't an approved drug, not because it wasn't licensed, but it was too expensive for the number of months that you got 8 months for $150,000 a year, or whatever they were charging. I think they were charging $10,000 a month.
That's why it's difficult as well, I think, is when we talk about patient numbers. So we want to find the true patient numbers, but sometimes that's a bit scary because we're also trying to get the drugs because we're saying there aren't that many really. But then we need to get the proper patient numbers, and they were saying, well, actually there's like double the amount we thought.
And we're not going to fund that many, right, because at $120,000 a year.
Josh, I mean, you're right about this loading of the cost because it's been ratified by a commercial agency.
But these aren't, that's why I unloaded them, because it gets weirder. This is the wholesale in the U.S.
But there's a commercial argument, being a businessman again, if you can actually justify 5 years extra lifespan contributing to society and putting it back in, there's a business model in there that can be offset. Is that worth looking at or not?
So that's a requirement, I think, in NICE. I've been asked before to contribute to that. But some of these, I mean, we're going to get lucky in PRT, which is why they're going to go for a much higher number. But most of the drugs we're talking about don't have that big of a hazard ratio. They're doing 6 to 8 months. I mean, Even and then we're not comparing trials to trials, but you know, CarciNET showed what 24 months. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that was off stable patients, so it wasn't off progressive patients. So, you know, if you look at ProMed, it was 8 months. We're talking 8 months progression-free survival for $60,000 a year. That's a big number.